Hello and welcome to Real Life Regulators Talkback, a web show that recaps the NASAA's Real Life Regulators podcast. I'm Jeremy Lushene, Education and Outreach for the Washington State Department of Financial Institutions.
Hi there, I'm John Eichkorn, Director of Compliance Enforcement and Anti-Fraud with the Kansas Department of Insurance.
Hey guys, I am Rachel Carden. I'm the Director of Investor Education for the Tennessee Securities Division.
And I'm Chelsea Siler, Manager of Investor Education and Engagement at the British Columbia Securities Commission. And we are all here to talk about episode 2 of the Real Life Regulators podcast.
Yeah, and for those of you who are maybe not familiar with NASAA, NASAA is actually the North American Securities Administrators Association, and its mission is to protect investors from fraud and abuse, educate investors, support responsible capital formation, and to help ensure the integrity and efficiency of financial markets.
In the Life Stages Project Group, which is why we're all here today, we produce the Real Life Regulators podcast and the Real Life Regulators Talkback web show.
We also have a fun new way to learn about each episode by filling out our Talkback Tidbit puzzles. You can fill out the puzzles as you listen to each episode. To get to the Talkback Tidbit puzzles, click on the link below.
Our Real Life Regulators show is a true crime podcast. When we are choosing cases to feature, we are always keeping you, the listeners, in mind, and we want to highlight interesting and different types of cases. Episode 2 discusses how financial fraudsters target elderly victims by exploiting a trust. It features investigators and attorneys from the District of Columbia Department of Insurance, Securities and Banking, and it's called Swindled by the Son She Never Had.
Today's episode focuses on Mrs. Goldstein, an elderly woman and a former hairstylist who came to the U.S. from Sweden and was able to build up a modest nest egg. After a fall and some other health issues, she ended up being financially exploited by her annuity salesman, Fred. Fred worked his way into her life pretending to help, but behind the scenes, he was taking control of her finances and legal decisions. Also, he was isolating her from her loved ones and set out to take everything she had. Hey guys, what did you find interesting about this episode?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll start off. I'll just say, as a law enforcement officer myself, I found it really disheartening to see that somebody like Fred, who's a registered person, who should be taking the financial best interest of Mrs. Goldstein to heart, did not do that. He actually, the person that she should have been able to trust the most, ended up defrauding her. You know, Mrs. Goldstein, actually, I understand from listening to the podcast, met Fred just through a mutual contact that she had through her beauty salon. And she trusted her friend and her friend's advice and got in contact with Fred. And then from there, unfortunately, she built a relationship that ended up in mistrust at the end.
And what struck me as interesting was just the sheer boldness of Fred, who was her annuity salesman. He was her financial advisor, and he very nearly got away with it. If you go back and listen to the episode, you'll hear that the attorneys and representatives from District Columbia on this case, they ordered restitution in an attempt to make the sister whole. But Fred by that point had become her sole gatekeeper. He had removed Miss Goldstein's sister as the beneficiary from her accounts. He had added himself. And, to me, that's where the boldness comes in, because this highlights his true intention, which was to drain all of her accounts once she passed. And so this was something that obviously had been thought about in the long term, and he was just waiting and biding his time to be able to do it.
That's such a good point, Rachel. The thing that stuck out to me is Fred, plain and simple, violated his fiduciary duty.
Absolutely.
He was a registered professional and he violated his duty. And, he was using that money as though it was his own. This is money that our victim spent years building up, working in a beauty salon to enjoy her modest and pleasant retirement. And he targeted her to violate trust, use her money as his own. He used her money for his children. And that was money that our victim's sister could have used had she remained on the account as our victim had intended.
And for me, this is just textbook case of social isolation. I mean, when Fred showed up to the hospital after her fall, no one in her friend group or her family knew who he was. And yet he was able to somehow over time just completely cut off contact between her and her friends and her family. He was able to control who came to the nursing home to see her, who she talked to, and probably even what she talked about.
And yeah, Jeremy, that kind of highlights the stark reality of just aging and cognitive decline in general when it comes to our finances and how that can have a direct effect on a person's finances. And because oftentimes it's happening at a slow but steady rate. And so it can even be difficult to recognize that a decline is happening and to recognize that a deceit is happening as a result, even for close friends and family members. And so, that's why it's so important not to allow your elderly loved ones to become socially isolated, to make sure that you are involved and that you can be that resource for someone. Because oftentimes, even if you're close to this individual, it can be hard to recognize that something like this is happening.
Yeah, absolutely, Rachel. And I think that's a good point to bring up. In any of our financial matters, it's a good point to establish a trusted contact person, somebody that we authorize at a retirement age of, say, 65 years old. You authorize a person to be on your account, not to make any type of transactions, but to be a contact for the brokerage firm or the bank to call in case they start to see things that are irregular in your accounts, like possible financial exploitation. A trusted contact certainly doesn't have authority to act on your behalf. They cannot execute transactions or engage in activity in your account unless you actually set them up to be able to do that.
Yeah, and having that trusted contact person is one layer to protect yourself. Of course, we always talk about knowing the red flags of fraud, and you can learn about those on NASAA's Fraud Center. There's lots of really great investor education tips on there, things like the top investor threats that we're seeing currently, warning signs of fraud. Jeremy mentioned social isolation earlier, and there's even a investment fraud quiz on the NASAA site.
And I was just going to also say too, Chelsea, that you can go to NASAA's website to search for the trusted contact person and who actually that is. There's a lot of good information on there, including I found a video that you can watch that talks more about trusted contact persons.
To visit NASAA's website, go to nasaa.org. Well, thank you all for taking part in today's episode of Real Life Regulators Talkback. Please don't forget about that Talkback Tidbits puzzle in the link right below.
Yeah, and if you have any further questions about today's episode, please make sure that you reach out to us. You can email realliferegulators@gmail.com with anything that you want to talk to us about.
And if you'd like to hear future episodes, all you have to do is hit the subscribe button and you can listen to Real Life Regulators podcast. And you can also search for us on your favorite podcast platform.